The Theory of Moral Sentiments by Adam Smith. Part 7 of the Systems of Moral Philosophy. Section 3 of the different systems which have been formed concerning the principle of approbation. Chapter 1 of those systems which deduce the principle of approbation from self-love. Those who account for the principle of approbation from self-love do not all account for it in the same manner, and there is a good deal of confusion and inaccuracy in all their different systems. According to Mr. Hobbes and many of his followers, man is driven to take refuge in society, not by any natural love which he bears to his own kind, but because without the assistance of others he is incapable of subsisting with ease or safety. Society upon this account becomes necessary to him, and whatever tends to its support and welfare he considers as having a remote tendency to his own interest, and on the contrary whatever is likely to disturb or destroy it, he regards as in some measure hurtful or pernicious to himself. Virtue is the great support, and vice the great disturber of human society. The former, therefore, is agreeable, and the latter offensive to every man, as from the one he foresees the prosperity, and from the other the ruin and disorder of what is so necessary for the comfort and security of his existence. That tendency of virtue to promote and of vice to disturb the order of society, when we consider it coolly and philosophically, reflects a very great beauty upon the one and a very great deformity upon the other, cannot, as I have observed upon a former occasion, be called into question. Human society, when we contemplate it in a certain abstract and philosophical light, appears like a great and immense machine, whose regular and harmonious movements produce 1,000 agreeable effects, as in any other beautiful and noble machine that was a production of human art. Whatever tended to render its movements more smooth and easily, would derive a beauty from this effect, and on the contrary, whatever tended to obstruct them would displease upon that account. So virtue, which is, as it were, the fine polish to the wheels of society, necessarily pleases, while vice, like rust, which makes them jar and grate upon one another, is as necessarily offensive. This account, therefore, of the origin of approbation and disapprobation, so far as it derives them from a regard to the order of society, runs into that principle which gives beauty to utility, and which I have explained upon a former occasion, and it is from thence that this system derives all that appearance of probability which it possesses. When those authors describe the innumerable advantages of a cultivated and social, above a savage and solitary life, when they expatiate upon the necessity of virtue and good order for the maintenance of the one and demonstrate how infallibly the prevalence of the vice and disobedience to the law tends to bring back the other, the reader is charged with the novelty and grandeur of those views which they open to him, and sees plainly a new beauty in virtue, and a new deformity in vice, which he had never taken notice of before, and is commonly so delighted with the discovery that he seldom takes time to reflect that this political view, having never occurred to him in his life before, cannot possibly be the ground of that approbation and disapprobation with which he has always been accustomed to consider those different qualities. When those authors, on the other hand, deduce from self-love the interest which we take in the welfare of society, and the esteem which upon that account we bestow upon virtue, they do not mean that when we are in this age applaud the virtue of Cato and detest the villainy of Catiline, our sentiments are influenced by the notion of any benefit we receive from the one, or of any detriment we suffer from the other. It was not because of the prosperity or subversion of society in those remote ages and nations it was apprehended to have any influence upon our happiness or misery in the present times, that according to those philosophers we esteemed the virtuous and blamed the disorderly characters. They never imagined that our sentiments were influenced by any benefit or damage which we supposed actually to redound to us from either, but by that which might have redounded to us had we lived in those distant ages and countries, or by that which still redound to us, if in our own times we should meet with characters of the same kind. The idea, in short, which those authors were groping about, but which they were never able to unfold distinctly, was that indirect sympathy which we feel with the gratitude or resentment of those who received the benefits or suffered the damage resulting from the opposite characters, and it was this which they were instinctively pointing at when they said that it was not the thought of what we had gained or suffered which prompted our applause or indignation, but the conception or imagination of what we might gain or suffer if we were to act in society with such associations. Sympathy, however, cannot in any sense be regarded as a selfish principle. When I sympathize with your sorrow or your indignation, it may be pretended indeed that my emotion is founded in self-love because it arises from bringing your case home to myself, from putting myself in your situation, and thence conceiving what I should feel in the like circumstances. But though sympathy is very properly said to arise from an imaginary change of situations with the person principally concerned, yet this imaginary change is not supposed to happen to me in my own person and character, but in that of the person with whom I sympathize. When I condole with you for the loss of your only son, in order to enter into your grief, I do not consider what I, a person of such character and profession, should suffer if I had a son, and if that son was unfortunately to die. But I consider what I should suffer if I was really you, and not only changed circumstances with you, but I changed persons and characters. My grief, therefore, is entirely upon your account, and not in the least upon my own. It is not, therefore, in the least selfish. How can that be regarded as a selfish passion, which does not arise even from the imagination of anything that has befallen, or that relates to myself, in my own proper person and character, but which entirely occupied about what relates to you? A man may sympathize with a woman in childbed, though it is impossible that he should conceive himself as suffering her pains in his own proper person and character. That whole account of human nature, however, which deduces all sentiments and affections from self-love, which has made so much noise in the world, but which, so far as I know, has never yet been fully and distinctly explained, seems to me to have arisen from some confused misapprehension of the system of sympathy.